Every Sunday morning, the church overflowed before 8 a.m. Not because a famous preacher was visiting, not because miracles were advertised, but because Sandra would be leading worship. Sandra, the beloved daughter of Pastor Jude and Pastor Angela, stood at the altar like light itself. Her white gown flowed gently as she lifted the microphone. Her voice, soft, pure, heavenly, carried through the sanctuary like a river of peace. When she sang, people wept. When she prayed, the youth knelt. When she greeted elders, she bent respectfully, smiling with humility that looked almost divine. But before we go deeper into this story, if you love dramatic, emotional stories like this, please like, share, and subscribe to Tales by Savvy Sam. Your support keeps these powerful stories coming. Now, let's continue. Sandra was more than just a singer. She was everywhere. Morning devotions, youth leadership meetings, prayer visitations, hospital evangelism, night vigils. She knew every church in the city. From large auditoriums to small storefront ministries, Sandra had connections. She knew pastors by first name. She knew their wives. She knew the prominent businessmen who funded projects. To the world, she was the perfect church girl. But perfection has shadows. And Sandra's shadow was darker than anyone could imagine. At night, when the church lights went off and her parents assumed she was in her room praying, Sandra transformed. The white gown became a tight red dress. The Bible became a designer purse. The worship songs were replaced by loud music in clubs across town. She knew every hotel receptionist by face. Every VIP lounge waiter nodded when she entered. She wasn't just a visitor. She was known. Respected men from church, married men, recognized her too. But in those dim lights, no one called her Sister Sandra. They called her something else. Only the men who had truly known her understood the double life she lived. Sandra convinced herself she was in control. She told herself she was not like those girls. She didn't drink too much. She chose her company carefully. She prayed every morning for forgiveness. She fasted twice a week. "I am still God's child," she would whisper into the mirror while applying makeup. But sin does not disappear because we sing louder on Sunday. It grows in silence. It waits. It watches. And one small mistake can expose everything. It started with nausea. Sandra ignored it at first. She blamed stress. Too many church activities. Too many late nights. Too many secrets. But when the dizziness refused to leave, when her body began to betray her with signs she could no longer dismiss, fear crawled into her heart. One afternoon, Pastor Angela entered Sandra's room quietly. She had brought her daughter fruit and warm tea. Sandra was asleep. The room was unusually messy. That was not like her. Pastor Angela noticed a small pharmacy bag on the table. She hesitated. She should not snoop. But something inside her, a mother's instinct, pushed her hand forward. Inside the bag was a pregnancy test kit. And beneath it, medical test results. Her hands began to shake. She opened the envelope. Positive. Pregnant. Her breath caught in her throat. She flipped to the next page. Another test result. STD screening. Her eyes scanned the lines until they stopped. HIV. Positive. The tea fell from her hands and shattered on the floor. Sandra woke up. Their eyes met. In that moment, silence screamed louder than any choir. Pastor Angela's lips trembled. "Sandra, what is this?" Sandra's heart pounded violently. She opened her mouth, but no sound came out. Her mother staggered backward as if physically struck. "You? My daughter. The one leading prayers. The one teaching young girls purity." Tears rolled down Sandra's face. "Mummy, I..." But there was no explanation big enough to fill that room. No excuse strong enough to erase the results on that paper. That evening, Pastor Jude returned home to find his wife sitting on the floor, silent, broken. The test results lay between them like a death certificate. He read them slowly. His hands did not shake, but his eyes changed. A man who had counseled hundreds of families. A man who had preached about holiness for 25 years. A man who had trusted his own daughter. Now faced with a truth he could not rebuke away. "Call her," he said quietly. Sandra walked into the living room, knowing her world had ended. "Who is responsible?" her father asked calmly. She could not answer, because there wasn't just one. The silence was worse than confession. Pastor Jude closed his eyes. The weight of reputation, the weight of shame, the weight of leadership, all pressing against his chest at once. Outside their house, church members still saw a holy family. Inside, everything was collapsing. Sandra fell to her knees. "Daddy, I'm sorry. I didn't plan this. I thought I could manage it. I thought." "You thought what?" he interrupted softly. She had no answer. That night, no one slept. In her room, Sandra stared at her reflection. The same face people admired. The same voice that moved congregations. Now carrying a child. Now carrying a virus. Now carrying consequences she could not pray away overnight. And for the first time, she felt fear that worship songs could not drown. Because secrets can survive whispers, but they cannot survive test results. And this was only the beginning. The next morning felt heavier than a funeral. No one spoke at breakfast. The sound of cutlery against plates felt too loud. Sandra's eyes were swollen from crying. Pastor Angela looked 10 years older overnight. Pastor Jude sat upright, silent, staring into nothing. But the world outside their home was normal. The church group chat buzzed. Reminder: youth rehearsal by 4 p.m. Sister Sandra, please confirm Sunday ministration. Pastor's family prayer visitation at 6 p.m. Sandra's phone kept vibrating on the table. Each vibration felt like a judgment. Finally, Pastor Jude spoke. "You will not lead worship this Sunday." The words were calm, but they cut deeply. Sandra nodded slowly. That was expected. But what she didn't expect was what came next. "We will not hide this," he said. Her head snapped up. "Daddy, please. I have preached that sin grows in darkness. If I hide my own house, then I am a hypocrite." Pastor Angela broke down again. "Jude, think about her future. The church, the community. The truth," he said firmly, "is better than a lie that spreads." Sandra felt the ground disappear beneath her. By afternoon, Pastor Jude called the church elders for a private meeting. Sandra stayed in her room, pacing. She imagined whispers. She imagined eyes staring at her belly. She imagined the youth girls who called her mentor looking at her with disgust. Her phone rang. It was Daniel. Not her father. Not a church member. Daniel. One of the prominent men. A respected businessman. Married. Choir sponsor. Heavy tither. Her heart skipped. "Hello," she answered quietly. "Are you okay?" he asked. His voice was smooth. Controlled. "How did you know?" she whispered. "Your mother called my wife this morning." Sandra froze.
So it had already begun. What did she say? Sandra's voice trembled. "That you are sick." Sandra laughed bitterly. That's one way to put it. There was silence on the other end. "Daniel, I'm pregnant." Another silence. Longer this time. "And?" he finally said. "And?" she almost screamed. "What do you mean by and?" "It could be yours." He inhaled slowly. "Sandra, be careful with your words." The coldness in his tone shocked her. "You told me you loved me." That was emotional talk. She felt something inside her crack. "You said your marriage was dead." "It is complicated." "You promised." "I promised nothing." Her hand shook so badly she nearly dropped the phone. "Listen carefully," he continued. "Do not mention my name to anyone. Not your parents. Not the church. Especially not my wife." "You think this is about you?" she cried. "I tested positive, Daniel. HIV." There was complete silence. Then his voice lowered. "That is impossible." "It's on paper." Another long pause. Then it didn't come from me. The call ended. Sandra stared at her phone like it had betrayed her. In that moment, she realized something terrifying. She didn't even know who it came from. The walls she built around her double life were collapsing fast. By evening, Pastor Jude returned from the elders' meeting. His face said everything. "They know," he said simply. Pastor Angela gasped. Sandra felt heat rush through her body. "They prayed," he continued. "Some cried. Some were disappointed." "Disappointed?" Sandra whispered. "That's all." He looked at her with eyes filled with pain. "One elder suggested we remove you from every leadership role immediately." Her chest tightened. "Another blow. And?" she asked. I agreed. It felt like public execution. "But that is not the worst part," Pastor Jude added quietly. Her heart pounded. "What else?" "One of the elders said someone had seen you at a hotel last month." Sandra's stomach dropped. They mentioned a specific night. That night. She remembered it clearly. A church fundraising dinner had ended early. She had told her mother she was staying for prayer. Instead, she had met Daniel at a private suite. "Who saw?" she whispered. "They didn't say. But word is spreading. And once church rumors begin, they do not stop." By Sunday morning, people were already whispering before service started. Sandra stayed home, but she could hear it in her mind. Impossible. I always suspected something. Pastor's daughter. What about all the purity messages? Her social media began to change. Fewer likes. Fewer comments. A few indirect posts appeared. Not everyone who sings worship is holy. Sandra turned off her phone. For the first time, she felt truly alone. Not in a club surrounded by strangers. Not in church surrounded by admirers. But alone in her own consequences. That night, her body ached. Fear crept in again. Not just about reputation, but about her health. About the baby. About the future. She placed her hand on her stomach. "What have I done?" she whispered. In the living room, Pastor Angela cried softly while Pastor Jude stared at the Bible on his lap. The scripture he had preached so many times now felt personal. "Be sure your sin will find you out." He had quoted it with confidence before. Now it echoed in his own house. But what none of them knew was this. The public humiliation was only the beginning. Because someone was about to use Sandra's secret for something far more dangerous. And when betrayal mixes with fear, people do desperate things. By Monday morning, the whispers had grown teeth. Sandra had not stepped outside since Sunday. But shame does not need your presence to move. It travels on phones. It hides in screenshots. It spreads in voice notes. At exactly 9:17 a.m., her phone vibrated. Unknown number. She ignored it. It rang again. And again. Finally, she answered. "Hello." A distorted male voice replied. "You should check Facebook." Her heart froze. "What do you mean?" "Search your name." The call ended. Her hands trembled as she opened her social media. Her name was trending. Someone had posted pictures. Not one. Not two. Several. Pictures of her entering a hotel lobby in a tight red dress. Pictures of her laughing inside a VIP lounge. One blurry photo of her holding hands with a man whose face was half visible, but recognizable to those who knew him. The caption read, "Church angel by day. Hotel queen by night. Pastor's daughter exposed." Thousands of reactions. Hundreds of comments. Some mocking. Some angry. Some are pretending to be shocked. Some enjoying it. Sandra felt her throat close. There was a second post. A screenshot of medical results. Blurry, but readable enough. Pregnant plus HIV positive. Her scream shook the house. Pastor Angela rushed into the room. What happened? Sandra turned the phone toward her. Her mother staggered backward like she had been slapped. No, no, no. In the living room, Pastor Jude was already receiving calls. Church members. Journalists. even other pastors. One message stood out. "Sir, this is already on blogs. You need to address this publicly." Publicly. The word felt like a death sentence. Sandra's phone rang again. The same unknown number. This time she answered immediately. "What do you want?" she shouted. A soft laugh came through the speaker. "You see how fast reputation burns. Who are you?" "That doesn't matter." Her heart pounded violently. "Why are you doing this?" "Because secrets are expensive. And you owe someone." Cold sweat covered her body. "Oh, who?" "You've been entertaining powerful men. One of them is scared. Very scared. And scared men pay." It clicked. "Daniel. Tell him," the voice continued, "if he doesn't transfer 20 million naira within 48 hours, more videos will be released. Clear ones." Sandra's breath stopped. "There are videos," she whispered. "Oh yes. Hotels have cameras. Staff have phones. Money makes people loyal until a better offer comes." Her mind raced. "You're blackmailing him. And you." The call ended again. Sandra dropped the phone. This was bigger than shame. This was war. Within hours, reporters gathered outside their house. Cameras flashed. Neighbors peeped through curtains. Inside, Pastor Angela cried uncontrollably. Pastor Jude stood still, too still. At noon, he made a decision. "We will hold a press statement." Sandra looked at him in horror. "Daddy, no. If we stay silent, others will control the story." By 4 p.m., the church auditorium was filled, not with worshippers, but with journalists. Cameras pointed at the altar where Sandra once sang. Now, she sat in the front row, covered in a simple scarf, eyes lowered. Pastor Jude stepped to the pulpit. His voice was steady, but heavy. "My family is facing a painful situation. My daughter has made mistakes. Serious mistakes." Cameras zoomed in on Sandra's face. "But she is still my daughter. And she is still a human being." Some reporters exchanged glances. One raised his hand. "Pastor, is it true she is HIV positive?" The bluntness shocked everyone. Sandra's chest tightened. Pastor Jude paused. "Yes," he said quietly. "Medical tests confirm it." Gasps filled the room. Another reporter stood. "Is it true she was involved with married men in this church?" Silence exploded. Sandra's vision blurred. Pastor Jude did not answer immediately. He looked toward the seats where Daniel usually sat during services. "Empty. I will not name anyone," he said carefully. "But if any man used his position to exploit my daughter, God sees." It was subtle, but it was a warning. By evening, Daniel's phone had not stopped ringing either. His wife had locked herself in their bedroom. Business partners were asking questions. And then he received the same anonymous call. Tick-tock. "Who are you?" Daniel demanded. "You know who I represent. How did you get those videos?" Focus. 48 hours. "You think I will pay you?" A pause. Then the voice sent him something. A short video clip. Clear. Undeniable. Daniel and Sandra entering a hotel suite. His face fully visible. His wedding ring shining. His heart nearly stopped. Back in her room, Sandra felt physically sick. She turned on the TV. A news headline scrolled across the screen. Popular pastor's daughter in immorality scandal. Her picture flashed. Clips of her singing in church were shown side by side with nightclub footage. The contrast was brutal. Angel. Sinner. Victim. Manipulator. The internet had decided all versions at once. Her phone buzzed again. This time, a message from an unknown sender. "Check your email." She opened it. A single sentence. "If Daniel refuses to pay, we release everything, including the pregnancy-paternity timeline." Her blood ran cold. They knew dates. They knew details. Someone close. Someone watching. Suddenly, another thought hit her. What if this was not just about money? What if someone wanted to destroy her father's ministry completely? What if this was revenge? Her breathing became shallow. She had thought the worst thing was being exposed. But exposure was only step 1. Blackmail was step 2. And step 3. She didn't know yet. But she felt it coming. Because when powerful men are cornered, they do not fall alone. They drag others with them. And Sandra was standing directly in the path of something much bigger than her mistakes. The 48-hour countdown felt like a ticking bomb inside every room connected to Sandra's life. Daniel did not sleep. Not that night. Not the next. His wife had stopped speaking to him. She moved around their house like a ghost, her silence louder than accusations. Business partners postponed meetings. His church friends suddenly became busy. But Daniel was not a man used to losing control. And he refused to start now. By the second night, he made his decision. If he was going down, he would not go down alone. Meanwhile, Sandra's house felt like a prison. Reporters still camped outside. Church members sent mixed messages, some prayers, some insults disguised as advice. Her body felt weaker. The stress was affecting her health. She had barely eaten. The pregnancy made her nauseous. The diagnosis sat on her chest like a heavy stone. Pastor Angela stayed beside her most of the time now. Not as a pastor. As a mother. "I should have noticed," she whispered one evening, brushing Sandra's hair gently. "I was too proud of how perfect you looked." Sandra's eyes filled with tears. "I was good at acting, Mummy." "No," her mother said softly. "You were good at hiding pain." That night, Sandra received another message from the blackmailer. 24 hours left. Her heart raced. She didn't know whether Daniel had paid. She didn't know whether more videos were coming. She didn't even know if she wanted them to stop. Because part of her was tired. Tired of pretending. Tired of hiding. Tired of protecting men who would never protect her. Across town, Daniel sat in his office staring at the email demanding 20 million naira. He dialed a number. Not the blackmailer. Not Sandra. But someone else. A media consultant known for damage control. "I need a narrative," Daniel said calmly. "What kind?" the consultant asked. "One where I am the victim." The next morning, a new story broke online. But this time, it wasn't about Sandra alone. A blog headline read, "Pastor's daughter allegedly extorted married businessman after secret affair." Sandra felt the air leave her lungs when she saw it. The article painted a different picture. It claimed she had seduced a respected church sponsor. It claimed she threatened him with false pregnancy claims. It claimed she fabricated her HIV result for sympathy. Her phone exploded with messages again. But now they were harsher. She trapped him. These girls are dangerous. She wanted money. Sandra dropped the phone and began shaking uncontrollably. "He's lying," she whispered. In the living room, Pastor Jude read the same article. His jaw tightened. "They're trying to rewrite the story," he said. Pastor Angela looked confused. "Who?" But they both knew. Daniel. Sandra felt something inside her change. Fear was slowly turning into anger. "He thinks I will keep quiet," she said. Her father looked at her carefully. "Is there more we don't know?" She hesitated, then nodded. "There are videos." The room went silent. "Clear ones," she added. "They show him. Clearly." Pastor Angela covered her mouth. Pastor Jude's voice dropped. "How do you know?" "The blackmailer told me." Now everything made sense. This wasn't random. Someone had access. Someone who wanted money. But Daniel had chosen to fight back instead of paying. And he had chosen to sacrifice Sandra's name first. That afternoon, the blackmailer sent another message. But this time, it was different. A video file. Sandra's hands trembled as she opened it. It showed her and Daniel inside the hotel suite. Laughing. Drinking. Kissing. Clear. Undeniable. And at the end of the clip, Daniel looked directly toward the hidden camera. As if he knew it was there. Sandra replayed that part. Again. And again. Her stomach dropped. He knew. He knew. she whispered. What? Her father asked. I think he knew the cameras were there. The room froze. That meant something terrifying. This might not be random blackmail. This might be planned. Suddenly, her phone rang again. Unknown number. She answered slowly. You saw the video, the distorted voice said. Yes. Notice anything? Sandra swallowed hard. He looked at the camera. A short pause. Smart girl. Her heart pounded violently. What are you saying? Sometimes the hunter sets the trap and pretends to be the prey. Her mind exploded with possibilities. You mean Daniel planned this? Let's just say, powerful men sometimes create scandals to control the damage. Sandra's breathing became unstable. Why are you telling me this? Because the story you see online. That was his counterattack. But he didn't expect one thing. What? You. Silence stretched between them. You can destroy him, the voice continued. Not with anger. With truth. Who are you? She demanded. A long pause. Then, slowly, someone who also lost because of him. The line went dead. Sandra sat frozen. This was no longer just about sin, or shame, or pregnancy. This was about manipulation, about power, about a man who may have used her recklessness for his own protection. That evening, another shocking update broke. Daniel held his own press conference. He stood before cameras, looking calm and composed. I was emotionally manipulated, he said. I regret my weakness, but I am also a victim of blackmail and extortion. Sandra watched the broadcast in disbelief. Victim. He continued. I will cooperate with authorities to expose the criminals behind this. He was shifting blame. Brilliantly. Dangerously. And if he succeeded, Sandra would stand alone in the storm. But something inside her had changed. She was done protecting him. Done carrying shame for two. Done pretending she was the only sinner in this story. Because if he wanted a public war, then maybe it was time for the full truth to step into the light. And this time, she would not kneel. The city was divided. Half believed Daniel. Half believed Sandra. But the loudest voices online had already chosen their villain. And it wasn't him. Sandra sat in her room staring at her reflection. No makeup. No white gown. No red dress. Just her. Raw. Tired. Human. For the first time in her life, she was not performing. Not for church. Not for men. Not for reputation. Her father knocked gently and entered. I have been praying, Pastor Jude said quietly. Sandra gave a weak smile. What did God say? He sat beside her. He reminded me that truth does not need protection. Only courage. She swallowed. I'm scared. I know. He held her hand. But fear built this prison. Truth can open it. Sandra looked down at her phone. The video. The emails. The timestamps. The hidden camera angle. And the detail she had noticed. Daniel looking directly at it. That look haunted her. Because it meant he wasn't careless. He was calculating. Her phone buzzed. Another message from the blackmailer. But this time, no distortion. Just text. It's time. A second message followed. Check your email. She opened it slowly. Inside was a full folder. More videos. Financial records. Screenshots of transfers. Evidence that Daniel had paid hotel staff for specific room placements. Evidence that he had hired private security to control access to cameras. Evidence that this was not his first arranged scandal. Sandra's heart pounded violently. The final document was a statement draft. Signed by someone named Michael Adebayo. She froze. Michael. Daniel's former business partner. The man who disappeared from church 2 years ago after a financial misunderstanding. The blackmailer had a name now. And a motive. That evening, Sandra made a decision. Not in anger. Not in revenge. But in clarity. She called her father. I'm ready. Within hours, a press conference was arranged, Not inside the church auditorium this time, but in a neutral public hall. Reporters gathered again, expecting another dramatic denial. Daniel also tuned in from his home, confident. He believed she would either beg or crumble. He underestimated her. Sandra stepped up to the microphone. No glamorous outfit. No performance voice. Just calm strength. "I made mistakes," she began. "I lived a double life. I hurt my parents. I hurt myself." Cameras flashed. "I am pregnant. And I am HIV positive." The room was silent. "But I'm not a liar." She paused. Then continued. "Mr. Daniel claimed he was manipulated. Today, I will present evidence showing premeditated setup and pattern behavior." A screen behind her lit up. Video clips played. Clear. Undeniable. Daniel looking at the hidden camera. Hotel payment records. Text messages arranging room numbers. Gasps filled the hall. Reporters scrambled. Phones rang instantly. Sandra continued speaking. "This is not about destroying a man. It is about ending a pattern of powerful men using women, then discarding them when consequences appear." Her voice did not shake. "For months, I thought silence was loyalty. I thought shame belonged only to me." She looked directly into the camera. "It does not." Back in his house, Daniel's face drained of color. His wife stared at him in horror. "How many?" she whispered. He had no answer. Within minutes, social media exploded again. But this time, the narrative shifted. Daniel's business partners released statements distancing themselves. Church elders announced an internal investigation. Sponsors withdrew support. And then, something unexpected happened. Michael Adebayo appeared. Not as a shadow, but in person. He stepped beside Sandra at the conference. "I was Daniel's partner," he said calmly. "I lost my company when I refused to participate in financial misconduct tied to similar scandals." He presented documents, contracts, bank transfers, NDAs signed by hotel staff. The conspiracy was deeper than personal immorality. It was systematic, calculated. Daniel had created compromising situations before to control narratives, silence threats, and manipulate leverage. Sandra had not been his first risk, just the one that backfired. That night, Daniel was invited for questioning by the authorities. His public image collapsed in 24 hours. Sponsors left. Church membership split. His wife moved out. Power evaporated quickly when truth arrived. At home, Sandra sat quietly beside her mother. The house was still. No reporters now. No shouting. Just peace. For the first time in weeks, she breathed fully. "I'm still sick," she whispered. Pastor Angela held her gently. "Yes. I'm still pregnant. Yes. I still made terrible choices." Her mother nodded softly. "But you told the truth," she said. "And truth is the beginning of healing." Weeks later, Sandra began treatment. Not just medically, but emotionally. She stepped away from the spotlight completely. Not because she was hiding, but because she was rebuilding. Her father preached a different sermon one Sunday. Not about judgment, but about restoration. He did not mention her name. He didn't need to. The church had learned something painful. Holiness is not performance. Sin is not gendered. Power without accountability is dangerous. And shame should never silence truth. Sandra's baby would be born into a complicated world, but not a dishonest one. She had lost her reputation, lost innocence, lost illusions, but she found something stronger. Her voice, not as a worship leader, but as a woman who survived exposure, manipulation, and public humiliation, and chose truth anyway. If this story moved you, challenged you, or opened your eyes, please like, share, and subscribe to Tales by Savvy Sam. Stories like this remind us that behind every scandal is a human being, and behind every truth is courage. Drop a comment below. Was Sandra a victim, a sinner, or both? Let's talk about it.